Your sister's kids are going places. Your son? He can't even read properly. That's what my mom said, right in front of everyone, like she was commenting on the weather. Then my aunt laughed. She didn't even try to whisper. He's just like his deadbeat dad. I didn't say anything. Not because I agreed, not because I was okay with it, but because sometimes, when people have already made up their minds about you, every word you speak just gets twisted into more proof that they're right. So I stayed quiet, but what none of them knew, what none of them even imagined, was that a few weeks later, my son would walk onto a stage in front of hundreds of people and read a letter he had written himself. And when he read the last line, my mom covered her face, not out of shame for what he said, but out of shame for what she never believed. Let me back up for a second. My name is Janelle, and I've spent most of my adult life being compared to my sister. Her name's Clara, and she's the kind of person family photo albums were made for. Blonde, Ivy League, 2 kids in STEM programs, married to a guy who makes 6 figures and calls my mom ma'am. She's polite, successful, and a walking checklist of everything my mother ever hoped for. Me? I got pregnant at 23 by a man who walked out 3 years later and never looked back. I've been raising my son Micah on my own ever since. I work 2 jobs, one at a diner in the mornings and one cleaning medical offices at night. There's no vacation photos, no piano recitals, just me, Micah, and whatever we can piece together on a paycheck. Micah is 10. He's quiet, kind, and a little shy. He still sleeps with his nightlight on, and he has this way of looking down when people speak too fast. He's got something called mild dyslexia, which means reading for him is like trying to run through water. Possible, but exhausting. But he tries. Oh my God, he tries. And still, every single family dinner turns into a performance review for my life. Thanksgiving at Clara's house is where this all started, the moment that lit the fuse. She was hosting, like always. Her house smelled like cinnamon and had matching napkin rings. I brought my usual green bean casserole, which no one touched. We all sat around the table, and the conversation, as it always does, turned into a list of Clara's kids' latest achievements. "How's Ezra?" someone asked. Clara beamed. He just got selected for a robotics mentorship program at Purdue, and Layla placed 3rd in state math. That's when my mom turned to me. No warning. No softness in her voice. "Your sister's kids are going places. Your son, he can't even read properly." She smiled like she was offering tough love, like it was helpful to remind me of how far behind we were falling. Then my Aunt Delia, who's never missed a chance to stir the pot, chuckled and said, "Well, look who his father was." That hit harder than I expected. The whole room kind of paused, like they knew it crossed a line, but no one wanted to be the one to say it. And me? I didn't move. I looked down at my plate, cut my turkey into little pieces I didn't eat, and told myself to breathe. Micah didn't say anything. He was sitting on the couch with Layla trying to play Mario Kart on a controller that wasn't even plugged in. My heart cracked open. They saw him as a joke, as a shadow of someone who didn't care enough to stay. And in that moment, it felt like I had failed to protect him. Not from life, but from our own blood. But here's the thing. You never really know what a kid is made of until the moment they stand up in front of a room and tell the truth everyone else is afraid to say. And on award night, Micah didn't just read a letter. He changed the entire room. He didn't scream. He didn't beg for attention. He didn't throw their words back at them. He just read. And when he said the last line, my mom, who'd spent years pretending he'd never measure up, slowly covered her face with her hands, because for the first time, she knew she was wrong. Would you like me to move on and expand? Section 2, Introduction, Setting the Scene. Next, you said yes, expand Section 2 and do it in 700 words. ChatGPT said, here is Section 2, Introduction. Setting the scene expanded into a 700-word first-person script. This section deepens the viewer's connection to the narrator and her son, sets the emotional baseline, and prepares the audience for the conflict ahead. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment above a laundromat on 7th Street, right across from the train tracks. Every time the freight train comes rumbling through, usually around 3 a.m., the windows shake, and a faint cloud of detergent scent drifts up through the floorboards. It's not fancy, it's not quiet, but it's home. My name's Janelle, and I've been raising my son Micah on my own since he was 3. I work mornings at a diner called Jenny's Kitchen, swinging doors, where I've been serving the same regulars for the past 8 years. Truckers, retirees, a few college kids nursing hangovers and coffee cups. At night, I clean exam rooms at a dental office 2 towns over. Mondays and Thursdays, I don't get home until past 11. My feet hurt. My hands are always dry. And every day I ask myself if I'm doing enough. Micah is 10 now. His smile is crooked and he's got this soft, raspy voice like he's telling you a secret, even when he's just saying, "Can I have cereal?" He loves puzzles, anything with Legos, and telling the same 3 knock-knock jokes until I pretend to be annoyed, but never really am. He also struggles with reading, badly. When he was in 1st grade, his teacher pulled me aside after a parent-teacher conference and said, "Micah's a sweet boy, but we may want to get him evaluated." Didn't know what that meant. I felt like I was being told something was broken, and it was my fault for not noticing sooner. A few months later, he was diagnosed with mild dyslexia, not the kind that stops you from reading entirely, but the kind that makes it feel like the words on the page are always trying to slip away just when you think you've got them pinned down. We work on it every day. Flashcards, practice sheets, audiobooks. There are days he gets so frustrated he throws the book down and cries into his arms, and on those days I sit next to him and whisper, "It's okay, we're going to figure this out together." And we do. Slowly, bit by bit. But outside our little world, things feel different, especially with my family. My mom, Verena, has always been hard to impress. She grew up poor, raised 5 kids, and still carries this survival mode energy that makes her treat emotions like distractions. Love, to her, is food on the table and a roof that doesn't leak. Anything else is fluff. My sister Clara? She's the golden child, married, financially secure, 2 high-achieving kids, a spotless house that smells like eucalyptus and lemon water. She makes parenting look like an Instagram reel, and she knows it. Every time there's a family dinner, Clara somehow finds a way to talk about Layla's science fair or Ezra's chess club. The rest of us, me, are background noise, present but not the focus. And that's fine, I'm used to being in the background, but Micah isn't. He hears things. At one birthday party, he asked me, "Mom, why does Grandma never ask me about school?" Another time he whispered, "Am I doing okay?" For a kid with, problems? That one broke me a little. He tries so hard, not just at reading, but at being lovable, acceptable, enough. And I try just as hard to protect him from feeling like he isn't. But when you're surrounded by people who only measure worth in straight A's and science medals, that protection starts to wear thin. We keep showing up to the family events, even though I know how they'll go. I bring my casserole. I wear something clean. I tell Micah to smile and answer politely when someone asks, "How's school?" Even though I know it's not really a question, it's a test. Still, we show up. Because deep down, I want him to have a family. I want him to feel like he belongs somewhere bigger than just me and our tiny apartment and the sound of freight trains at 3 a.m. And I think, maybe, just maybe, one day they'll see him. Really see him. Not as a reflection of me. Not as a shadow of a father who left. Not as a comparison to some cousin with a perfect GPA. But as Micah, my boy, who fights through every sentence like it's a mountain and still manages to smile at the top. I didn't know it then, but that moment, him asking if he was doing okay, was the quiet beginning of something much louder, something that would soon play out on a stage, under bright lights in front of every person who ever doubted him. Yeah, would you like me to continue with Section 3? The conflict, rising tension next? You said, yes, expand Section 3 and do it in 800 words. ChatGPT said, here is Section 3. The conflict, rising tension. Expand it into an 800-word first-person narrative script. This section builds emotional pressure, heightens the stakes, and drives the story toward its turning point, all while maintaining realism and emotional resonance. Thanksgiving was when it really came to a boil. We were at Clara's again. Of course we were. Her house always looked like something out of a home decor magazine: fall wreaths on the doors, table settings with name cards, tiny candles flickering like she hired a wedding planner for dinner. I brought Micah in behind me. He was wearing a blue button-up we'd found at a thrift store. He looked handsome, awkward in the way that only little boys can be when they're trying to look grown. He kept tugging at the collar like it was trying to strangle him. I whispered, "Just one dinner, buddy. We can make it through one dinner." He nodded, not really looking me in the eye. The night started the way it always does. Clara's husband poured wine for everyone but me. I never asked for any. The kids were all corralled into the living room, where Ezra and Layla were setting up a trivia game that Micah couldn't keep up with. He sat on the edge of the couch, controller in hand, pretending to understand what was happening. I stayed in the kitchen, helping Clara with the rolls. We made small talk, but I could feel the tension underneath it, like she was just waiting to bring up test scores or scholarships. Dinner was served: turkey, sweet potatoes, green beans, my casserole untouched like always. Everyone piled their plates, everyone except Micah, who took 2 rolls and sat quietly beside me. About halfway through dinner, the conversation shifted, as it always did, to the kids. Clara beamed as she talked about Ezra's robotics program and Layla's advanced math placement. My mom nodded proudly like she was the one who got them in. Then came the moment. Verena looked across the table at me, wine glass in hand, and said, with a smile so sharp it could cut glass, "Your sister's kids are going places. Your son, he can't even read properly, can he?" There was no venom in her voice. That's what made it worse. It was casual, dismissive, like she was pointing out a smudge on the window. The room fell quiet for half a second. Then my Aunt Delia laughed. "Well, what did we expect? He's just like his deadbeat dad." I don't know what I felt first: rage, shame, heartbreak. They all showed up at the same time, rushing into my chest so fast I thought I might actually choke. Micah looked up from his plate, his eyes scanning the table. No one else looked at him. No one defended him. And I stayed quiet, not because I didn't want to fight, but because I knew if I said anything, I'd lose control. I'd cry, or yell, or make it worse for him. So I did what I always do. I swallowed it. After dinner, we left early. I told Clara I wasn't feeling well, and she barely looked up from her dessert tray. On the drive home, Micah stared out the window in silence. Halfway home, he said quietly, "Am I dumb, Mom?" That was the moment. That sentence. Those 4 words, they broke something in me. I pulled the car over. I turned to him and said, "Micah, look at me. You are not dumb, not even close. You hear me?" He nodded slowly, but his face didn't believe me yet. That same week, a letter came home from school. There was going to be a special end-of-year assembly called the Courage and Character Awards. Each homeroom teacher would nominate one student to write a short letter about someone who inspired them, then read it out loud at the assembly. Micah came home with a permission slip. He'd been nominated by Ms. Turner, his 4th-grade teacher. "I don't want to do it," he mumbled, pushing the paper toward me. "Why not?" I asked, even though I already knew. He didn't look up. "I can't read like the other kids. I'll mess up." I sat beside him at the table. "Micah, do you remember what I always say?" He shrugged. I said, "We don't run from hard things. We walk straight at them, slowly if we have to, but we show up." He looked at me, searching my face for something solid to hold on to. I gave him a smile, small but certain, and in that moment we made a deal. We'd write the letter together. He'd speak the words, I'd help him shape them. But the heart, that would be all his. Every night for the next 2 weeks, we worked on it. We wrote sentences, erased them, rewrote them. I didn't correct his ideas. I just helped him build the bridge between what he felt and how he could say it. At first, he struggled to even finish a sentence. He'd stutter, trip over words, get frustrated. But slowly, the words came. One night, after he read through a full paragraph without stopping, he looked up and said, "Hey, I didn't mess up." I laughed, tears in my eyes, and said, "I told you, your words matter." That was the moment everything changed, because the boy they dismissed, the one they laughed at, was about to walk into a room full of people and say something they would never forget. Would you like me to now continue with Section 4, the turning point, decision or action taken, in approximately 800 words? You said, "Yes, expand Section 4 and do it in 800 words. ChatGPT said, Here is Section 4, the turning point, decision or action taken, expanded into an 800-word first-person narrative YouTube storytelling script. This section focuses on the emotional decision to act, the intense preparation and the quiet strength building within both mother and son. I always believed change doesn't come in lightning bolts. It shows up in moments, quiet ones, like a hand squeeze, a soft yes, or a boy saying, "I'll try." That's what Micah said after 2 weeks of back and forth about the school assembly. "I'll try, Mom." Not with confidence, not with excitement, but with something braver than both, willingness. And that was enough for me. I remember the night we started writing the letter like it happened 5 minutes ago. The two of us were sitting at the kitchen table, scrap paper everywhere, pencils with worn-down erasers, my phone playing soft jazz because he said it helped him concentrate. We had just eaten spaghetti, and there was still red sauce on his sleeve, but he didn't want to stop, not yet. "I want it to be about you," he said, "because you're the one who helps me." I blinked fast so he wouldn't see the tears. "Okay," I said, "let's start with that." So he began, slowly, saying each thought out loud before we wrote it down. He'd say something like, "My mom helps me even when she's tired," and then ask, "Is that too cheesy?" And I'd say, "No, that's real." Real is better than perfect. Some nights were magic. He'd string a few sentences together and beam like he'd just won the lottery. Other nights? Not so much. There was one where he broke down in frustration. He slammed his pencil down, covered his face with his arms, and whispered, "What's the point? I'm going to mess it up in front of everyone." I knelt next to him, rubbed his back, and said, "Micah, this letter isn't about reading perfectly. It's about speaking your truth. If someone laughs, that's on them. Not you. You have the courage to stand up and say something that matters. That's what this award is for." He didn't answer right away, but he didn't quit either. The next night, he asked if we could try again, so we did. He kept working, bit by bit, word by word, and then we had it, a full page. One page, handwritten in shaky pencil, full of misspellings, crossouts, and his voice. The next step was practice. I recorded myself reading the letter slowly, clearly the way his teacher taught us might help. We'd play it back while he followed along with his copy. Then we'd switch. He'd read it aloud to me. I'd sit across from him with a calm face, never rushing, never correcting unless he asked. I wanted him to know that there was no clock ticking, no pressure, just space, just love. He started carrying the letter in his backpack, reading it to himself during recess. Miss Turner told me she saw him whispering the words during free reading time. She said, "He's really taking this seriously. I've never seen him push himself like this before." I smiled and said, "Yeah, it means something to him." But it meant something to me, too. This wasn't just about an award. It was about reclaiming something that had been stolen from him, the right to be proud of himself. The weekend before the assembly, I borrowed a clean shirt from my friend Rosa, whose son had outgrown his dress clothes. I ironed it on a towel over our kitchen table. Micah asked why. I said, "Because you deserve to walk on that stage feeling like the king you are." He laughed and asked if he could wear sneakers with it. "Absolutely," I said. "Kings need comfort, too." The night before the event, I tucked him in after he read the entire letter out loud without a single stumble. I kissed his forehead, turned out the light, and walked into the hallway. And then I broke. I sat down on the floor, held my face in my hands, and let out every emotion I'd been carrying. Fear, pride, exhaustion, hope. I cried not because I was worried, but because he had done it. He had chosen to try even when he was afraid, even when he was surrounded by voices that told him he couldn't. He was becoming the kind of person I prayed he'd be, brave in the face of doubt. That night, as I sat on the kitchen floor folding his shirt, I remembered something my dad used to say before he passed. Real strength doesn't show up when you're winning. It shows up when you stand anyway, even when you think you'll fall. Micah was standing now, and tomorrow he'd walk onto that stage, not just as a student receiving an award, but as a boy who'd fought to be heard, a boy who'd show an entire room, including the people who doubted him, what real courage looks like. ENTs. Would you like me to continue with Section 5, the climax, big reveal or resolution, in approximately 800 words next? You said, yes, expand section 5 and do it in 800 words. ChatGPT said, here is section 5. The climax, big reveal or resolution, expanded into an 800-word first-person narrative. This is the emotional peak of the story. The scene where everything shifts and the audience gets the payoff they've been waiting for. It delivers closure, redemption, and a sense of power. The day of the assembly started gray, one of those Indiana mornings where the sky hangs low like it might rain but never actually does. I woke up before my alarm, heart pounding like I had a test of my own to take. Micah was already up. He was sitting on the couch with his note card in his hands, lips moving silently, eyes focused. I made him waffles, but he barely touched them. Just kept whispering the letter to himself, holding that little paper like it was a life raft. He looked up and asked, "Do you think Grandma's gonna come?" I hesitated. "She said she would," I replied. I didn't add she always says that. I didn't have to. By 9 a.m., we were dressed and ready. Micah wore the button-up shirt we'd ironed the night before, his favorite sneakers, and a nervous smile. I held his hand the whole ride to school. When we pulled up, the parking lot was full. I spotted Clara's SUV immediately, clean, silver, with an honor student sticker, proudly slapped on the back window. Of course she was there. We walked into the gymnasium together, and I could feel Micah squeezing my fingers tighter with every step. The room was decorated with streamers, paper stars, and a banner that read, "Courage and Character Celebrating the Heart of Our Students." I scanned the crowd. There they were, my mom, Verena, sitting 2 rows from the front next to Aunt Delia and Clara, all perfectly dressed, expressions neutral, scanning the program like they were reading stock reports. Micah noticed them too. He stiffened slightly. I leaned down and whispered, "You've got this." He didn't respond, just nodded. The principal stepped up to the mic. One by one, students were called to the stage to receive their awards. Some read poems, some gave short speeches, most got polite applause and a few photos snapped by proud parents. Then came the moment. Ms. Turner took the microphone. "This next award is one that touched me personally," she said. "The student showed me that courage isn't always loud, and strength doesn't always look the way we expect it to." She looked toward us. "I'd like to invite Micah Layton to the stage." My heart stopped. Micah stood, walked slowly toward the stage, his little hands shaking just enough for me to notice, but his shoulders were straight. Clara turned to look at me, surprised. Verena raised her eyebrows, then leaned slightly forward in her seat. Micah reached the podium, adjusted the mic the way we practiced, and carefully unfolded his note card. Then he spoke. Soft at first, then stronger. "My name is Micah Layton. I used to think I was broken. When other kids read out loud, I pretended to look for my pencil so no one would call on me. I thought maybe I was just dumb." The room went still. "But my mom told me that my brain just works differently. She told me that different doesn't mean worse. It just means it takes longer to get where you're going. And that's okay." He looked down for a second, took a breath, then kept going. "My mom works 2 jobs. She teaches me how to spell while she cooks dinner. She helps me with words even when her eyes are tired. When I said I was scared to speak in front of people, she said, 'You don't have to be perfect, you just have to be brave.'" People were starting to wipe their eyes. "So this is my letter to her, because she believed in me when no one else did. When I wanted to give up, she wouldn't let me." He paused. Then he looked straight into the audience. "If you're wondering why this card isn't empty, it's because my mom filled it with love, with words, with time." Silence, then a sound, a soft sob. I turned. It was my mom, Verena, covering her face. Her shoulders trembled. She wasn't crying loud, but she was crying. For the first time in years, maybe decades, she wasn't composed. She wasn't critical. She was just human. Micah walked back toward me after the applause started. It was quiet at first, like everyone was afraid to ruin the moment. Then it grew, louder and louder, until the whole room was clapping. I met him at the bottom of the steps. He leaned into me, and I held him tighter than I ever had. "You did it," I whispered into his ear. "You really did it." He nodded, then pulled back and asked, "Was I good?" I said, "You were amazing." As we walked past my family to get back to our seats, I didn't even look at them. I didn't need to. I didn't need their approval anymore. Micah didn't need their validation. He had stood on his own, told his truth, and silenced every voice that ever tried to shrink him. And he did it with a letter that wasn't perfect, but was completely, utterly his. Spoken with quiet strength and warmth, like telling a story from the heart to a friend who needs to hear it. After the assembly, people came up to us, teachers, parents, even the principal, just to shake Micah's hand. One woman, a mom I'd never met before, leaned down to him and said, "I hope you know how proud your mom must be. You made all of us cry." Micah just smiled shyly and said, "Thank you, ma'am." I saw Miss Turner standing off to the side, holding back tears of her own. She mouthed to me, "He was incredible." I nodded back, not trusting myself to speak. We didn't stick around too long. Big crowds aren't Micah's thing, and I could tell the adrenaline was starting to wear off. As we walked out, I looked back one more time. My mom was still in her seat, still wiping her eyes. For once, she had no words, and honestly, that was enough. We got in the car. I buckled Micah in, started the engine, and pulled out of the school parking lot in silence. I thought he might fall asleep, but after a few minutes, he said softly, "I didn't mess up, did I?" I shook my head, holding back a fresh wave of tears. "No, baby, you didn't mess up. You showed up. That's braver than most adults I know." He smiled, leaned back in his seat, and looked out the window like he could finally breathe. That night, I made his favorite, chicken tenders and curly fries, and we watched a movie in our pajamas. No talk of reading, no practice, just being. He fell asleep on the couch with a blanket around him, the corner of his award certificate sticking out from under his arm. I just sat there and stared at him, his little chest rising and falling, his mouth half open, dreaming, maybe, about a day where no one ever doubted him again. And I thought about everything that had happened, the years of being judged, compared, dismissed. I thought about the family dinners where I sat small and silent while the people who were supposed to love us treated my child like a footnote. But I also thought about that moment on stage, about how one shaky voice, my son's, could cut through decades of coldness and reach even the hardest hearts. I don't know what changed in my mom that day. She didn't say much after. She didn't apologize. She didn't wrap me in a hug or confess that she'd been wrong all these years. But 2 weeks later, when we went to another family gathering, she did something small, but seismic. She called Micah over when we walked in. She looked him in the eye and said, "You were very brave up there, sweetheart." That was it. No huge gesture, no fanfare, but it meant something. Even Micah seemed surprised. He just nodded and said, "Thanks, Grandma," before heading to the living room. And when Clara started up about Layla's latest math trophy for the first time, my mom didn't lean in. She stayed quiet. And when I looked over, I swear, there was a tiny smile on her face as she watched Micah build a Lego set by himself. It wasn't a full transformation. My family didn't suddenly turn into the Brady Bunch. Aunt Delia still made little comments under her breath. Clara still talked, like the world was a spotlight waiting for her kids. But something inside me had shifted. I didn't flinch anymore. I didn't lower my eyes or shrink myself to fit into their idea of success. Because I'd seen the truth, on that stage, in my son's voice, in the letter he read out loud without shame or fear. He'd found his power, and in doing so, I found mine too. If you asked me what the biggest lesson from all of this was, I'd say this: never measure your child or yourself against someone else's yardstick. Some kids win spelling bees. Some kids build robots. Some kids get straight A's. And some stand on a stage, heart pounding, voice shaking, and speak a truth so raw and so pure that even the people who tried to define them sit in silence. Success isn't medals or praise or report cards. Success is standing anyway, even when you think you'll fall. Success is saying, "This is me. I'm here, and I matter." That day, Micah taught me that. And I hope, if you're watching this and feeling like you or your kid doesn't measure up, I hope you remember his story, because the world will always have opinions. But sometimes it takes just one voice, small, brave, and honest, to rewrite the story everyone else thought they already knew. They said my son wouldn't amount to anything, but on that stage, in that moment, he didn't just read a letter, he read a new beginning, and it was written in his own hand. If this story moved you even just a little, please like the video. It helps more people hear stories like Micah's. And if you've ever felt like the underdog, like your voice didn't matter, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. I read every single one. Share this video with someone who might need a reminder. They're not alone, and they're more powerful than they know. And if you believe in stories that uplift and challenge the way we see each other, subscribe to the channel. There's more to come. Real people, real stories, real strength. Thanks for spending this time with me. Until next time, stay kind, stay brave, and remember, some of the strongest voices come from the quietest rooms.